Alrighty, so first of all, I do apologize the fact that I'm doing this video a week later than I anticipated. Usually I do this kind of video where I look at both conference at the end of the month, and since last match week, or actually not last match week, but the match week before last one, the one near the end of April, that was kind of supposed to be the time when I do this kind of video, but unfortunately I forgot to do so. So now we're just gonna include early May as well. The first match day, at least in May, in terms of looking at the record of each of these team in the Eastern Conference. And yes, we're gonna start by looking at the East, where, as I mentioned before, this year it's been the complete opposite of what we saw last season. It feels like this year things have just kind of flip flop. It's now the East that is looking very mediocre and looking pretty bad this season, and the West look like they're taking the power. The Eastern Conference being an absolute bloodbath, and we'll definitely get to it when we talk about the West, most likely tomorrow, talking about how the Western Conference standings looks like. So let us begin by talking about who's currently at first place. And at first place, this shouldn't be a big surprise. It's Nashville SC, who has a 7-2-1 record and they have 23 points. They've scored 21 goals while only conceded 6 goals so far this season. In fact, they're the only team in the Eastern Conference that have conceded less than 10 goals and have a single digit goals in terms of allow, and they have a plus 15 goal differential, and their record in April is 3-1-1. And as I said many times, Nashville is probably right now the team that I can safe to say that there's really not too much question you have with this team. Although the big concern I would say about this team is the fact that they have dealt with some injuries. Sam Surridge has been in and out of this lineup, and that definitely a bit of a concern for this national side. But because of how good their depth is throughout this team, there's really not too much concern, even if they lose some of their key players. And this has definitely been a team that is the team to beat right now in the East. I mean, this is probably the team that doesn't really have as much question as what we have these other teams, because as we get into the second place, this is a team that I don't think anyone saw being this high up in the standing, and a team that has really been flying under the radar. Nobody would have thought that the New England Revolution are all of a sudden in second in the Eastern Conference with 6-1-3 record and currently with 19 points while scoring 18 goals, conceding 12, and have a plus 6 goal differential. But you know why they got all the way up to second? They had an incredible April and early May as well. In fact, I think they are one of the more informed team right now in the league, and by far probably the most informed team in the Eastern Conference right now, with 5-0-1 is their record. Nobody has even got 4 wins so far out of the East, and they have 5. And yes, I know there's going to be some people that will say the New England is definitely a pretender. I'm kind of one of those kind of person, and I might even do a video talk about the New England Revolution and whether or not, when I look at where they are in the standings and look at some of the resort, do I really believe this is a real contender, or the fact that they're taking advantage of playing against some easy opponent, and also been very good this season at home as well. Yeah, that's definitely something that I might be looking to in the future. But hey, that's what you need to do if you take care of business against teams that you should beat, and you're winning your home games, which New England has pretty much done so for the most part. That's where they were right now. It's hard to believe this team at one point started the season 0-1-2. Like, this team was near the bottom of the Eastern Conference, at least after free match week, and everybody was panicking, and the fact that, oh boy, looks like this Marko Mitrovic hiring isn't really going so well. And now, next thing you know, they're all the way up in second in the Eastern Conference. Now, in third place, it is Inter Miami, despite the fact that I know Inter Miami fans are going through an absolute Armageddon, and I'm seeing a lot of Miami fans are already panicking and saying that this season is done. They still are 5-4-2, and it's understandable. I mean, again, that loss against Orlando City, yeah, that is going to go down as one of the biggest choke job we have ever seen in MLS history, and one of the worst losses, probably right up there with the Atlanta game. I want to say that, in recency bias, I would say that this would probably be the worst loss in Inter Miami franchise history, but then people forget that they also had that best of three series against Atlanta United, and they had those embarrassing losses that they had in game 2 and 3. I mean, those are counts as losses as well. And I would say between those two and the one that they had against Orlando City, equally the most embarrassing loss in this Inter Miami franchise history. But recency bias will definitely say that the last game against Orlando was the worst losses of this franchise history. But despite that, they because of the fact that that game that they lost, it was actually only the first game that they lost in a very long time. People kind of forget the fact that this team was on an 11 game unbeaten run, but that did finally came to an end, and their record is now 5-4-2 with 19 points. They scored 22 goals this season, but they give up 19 goals. So yeah, there's the problem for this team. As I mentioned many times, defense has been a big issue for this team. They have a +3 goal differential, and in terms of record in April and early May, 2-3-1 is their record. They're drawing a lot of games. Most of that happened at New Stadium because that stadium is absolutely cursed right now. They cannot get a win whatsoever in that stadium. In fact, it's got to be even more embarrassing the fact that they saw their rival getting become the first team to get a win in their brand new stadium compared to they did. Now we look at the Chicago Fire, who actually now dropped down to fourth place with 5-2-3 record. And Chicago is another one of those teams where I legitimately think that this team can be a contender, and they're probably closest to where we say about Nashville being the class of the East. But the problem with Chicago this season is that there's been times where they went back to old Fire. Or, as I always say, the Fire, even though they have definitely looked much better, at least in these last two seasons under Greg Berhalter, there's always time where they go back to old habits and find some of the most dumbest way a Chicago Fire team can lose a game, and that last game against Cincinnati is a great example of it. But they still have 17 points. They scored 19 goals this season while conceding 11, which is actually the second best defensive record in the Eastern Conference right now. Though the last couple of games, at least this month, their defense haven't been as good as what we saw back in March, but they still have a +8 goal differential and have a 3-1-1 as the record that they have in April and early May. Though technically they probably should have been unbeaten. In fact, the last game against Cincinnati, that one really hurts. That one was the one that really got away, and they would have been the only team to be going unbeaten out of any of the Eastern Conference teams. In fact, no Eastern Conference team went unbeaten between April and early May. That just shows you how mediocre things have gone with the East. Then we look at DC United again. I mean, this is a team that everybody thought that they were Dan and Barry after going through a bad stretch, but now here they are in fifth place with 4-3-4 record. You know when things are weird in the East when DC is among the playoff spot. I mean, this is no disrespect to DC United, but this was supposed to be a team that we predicted to be near the bottom of the Eastern Conference, and yet here they are, 4-3-4 with 15 points. Even though they only scored 13 goals this season, conceding 15 with a -2 goal differential, because of the fact that they have a 2-2-2 record, and lately they've definitely been doing much better, despite the fact that at least in the early part of the month we thought this is when reality started to set in for this DC team, and that good start they have is going to quickly pummel, and it just haven't been the case. I mean, the last two games they got wins in those two games, and now all of a sudden they're up in fifth in the standings. It's also important to note that when you look at the gaps between second all the way down to ninth, it's only a 7 points difference. In fact, the gap between ninth, or no, 11 all the way down to second is only 7 points. So this is kind of common in the early part of the season where there's going to be a log jam. That is, you're going to have teams kind of flip flop each different week depending on the resort it is. So yeah, wouldn't be surprised the next match week. This table will look completely different, especially here when there's really not much separated between all of these teams in the standings. Then we look at FC Cincinnati. So because of that big win that they had against Chicago, they're now up to sixth place with 4-3-4 record with 15 points. They scored 22 goals this season, but they have conceded 25 goals so far this season. They have conceded by far the most out of any teams that's above the red line. This is not a big surprise. This Cincy defense has been an absolute mess throughout this season. And a big part of the reason why they're so above the red line is, for once, that attacking prowess we thought the Cincinnati team would be. It started to really pick up the stack, and especially Evander started to look like his old self, at least in the last couple of weeks. Really, what started to look like the MVP self of really carrying this attack for this Cincinnati side. But still, -3 goal differential, and their recent record in April is 2-3-1. So at least they're not losing as much game as they did back in March, where they were losing a lot of games back in March, and that's why they're kind of behind the eight ball a little bit. But because of the way that other teams are not doing very well, it kind of helped them to propel them in the standings. Then we look at Charlotte FC, who a couple of weeks ago, this was a team that was among the top three in the Eastern Conference. But yeah, it's just safe to say that, you know how I say that they have been probably the biggest pretender in the Eastern Conference. Yeah, it's been shown in these last couple of games. 4-2-5 is the record. 14 points. They've scored 18 goals while conceding 19 goals with a -1 goal differential. And early on in April they had a pretty good record, but lately it's been nothing but loss for them. I believe they've now suffered 3 straight losses, and that has pummeled them in the standings all the way down to 7 with a 2-0-4 record. And the same with Toronto FC as well. In this midst of this 9-game home stretch, I mentioned before, yes, even though Toronto is still above the red line, it is a little bit misleading because they have a lot of those home games and they really haven't been doing a good job in terms of taking advantage of getting the 3 points that they needed, because they have a free 5-3 record, 14 points. They've scored 18 goals while conceding 20, because again, this team every single week it feels like this team is playing chaotic ball, and they have a -2 goal differential. But look at the record that they have. They only have one win so far in the last 6 games. One win during April and early May. They've drawn a lot of games, and some of these draws has not been great draw. And then the one loss that they suffer was against Atlanta United, of all team, a team that had no confidence whatsoever. And I mentioned that was a really bad loss for this TFC side. That was probably one of the easiest opponent they get to face during this 9-game home stretch, and yet they come out on an L. I mean, again, this is why I wouldn't be surprised Toronto wouldn't be up here in the standings for relatively long, because once this 9-game home stretch comes to an end, and they have to go on the road, just like what we see with teams that are going to be playing or are playing in stadium that will be hosting World Cup as well. I don't trust the fact that this TFC side is going to go through this mega long road trip and still come out with it being above the red line. They'll be lucky to probably still be in contention, or at least around the bubble, if they're just dropping way too many points to at home when they desperately need it. Then we look at NYCFC, and you talk about an absolute free fall. I mean, NYCFC, remember back in March I talked about them being right up there in the standings? Well, let's just say between April and early May, it's been nothing but free fall from them. 3-3-5 is their record. They only got 12 points. They have only gotten 2 points in the last 6 games. Yikes. 19 goals scored, 18 goals conceded with a +1 goal differential. 0-2-4 is the record. They're the only team in the East during this stretch where they have not got a win. They are in an absolute tailspin right now, and I already mentioned the biggest problem that this NYCFC team is having of why they're in an absolute tailspin. The attack is not scoring goals. Like the goals have completely dried up to this team. The problem that we thought this team would have in the beginning of the season has once again emerged. They don't have anybody that can score the goals, and they don't have a legit number 9 that can put the ball into the back net. And to mention, the defense has kind of regressed a little bit during this time. You get a team that is the only Eastern Conference team to have yet to get a win during April and early May, and are in the midst of a 7-game winless run right now. Then we look at Columbus. Columbus, 3-3-5, and currently with 12 points. If Columbus would have got a win against Minnesota, they would have been right up there here in the standings. But instead, that loss really hurts Columbus, because now they're once again back below the red line. They do have 12 points, but NYCFC still have the tiebreaker because of goal differential. But not by a lot. I mean, while NYCFC have a positive goal differential, which is crazy to see, because look at the team above them. All 4 of these teams have negative goal differential. I don't think I've seen that many teams have negative goal differential so far in that is above the red line. That just shows you how bad the East is this year. But yeah, they have a 3-1 and 2 record. And again, to be fair, April has been a very good month for Columbus. It feels like Aaron Rustrom has started to figure things out a bit. They start winning games and rising up the standings. But like I said, that loss against Minnesota, that felt like the Columbus Crew up back in March, where this was a team that was just in an absolute free fall and just cannot quite figure things out, and looks nothing like the Crew that we've seen in the past. Then we look at the New York Red Bulls, and actually one more thing I will say about the Crew. It's kind of interesting the fact that they're starting winning games now that Wissam Abu Ali is done for the season. Ever since he's done his knees, I mean, this team has actually been winning, which is kind of ironic, because he was supposed to be the guy that at times carried this team. And I thought when they lost him to that torn ACL, that was a death sentence for this Columbus team. But it hasn't. It's been kind of the opposite. If you just don't look at what happened in the last game when they blow that 2-0 lead against Minnesota. Then we look at the New York Red Bulls, who have a 3-3-5 record, also with 12 points. They scored 16 goals, but they have conceded 27 goals so far this season. I'm not surprised that the Red Bulls have been a very bad defensive team. I mean, I said it in the beginning of the season. It just does not feel like this team is going to be very good defensively. And with the way that Michael Bradley has kind of played that more high octane kind of style, I wonder in the last game that they had against Colorado, the reason why I think maybe Michael Bradley are started to kind kind of maybe dial back in terms of that aggressiveness on the attack is he knows that when he played that kind of aggressive style, they get absolutely exposed at the back. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like that style kind of fits this team either because they lost that game against the Colorado Rapids. That was actually one of the worst defense or worst attacking performance that they had in quite some while. And they have a -11 goal differential, and wins have been hard to come by for this Red Bulls team. 1-2-3 is the record. They only won one out of their 6 games during April and early May. Then we look at Atlanta United, who has a 3-1-7 record, currently with 10 points. They've scored 12 goals, conceding 18 with a -6 goal differential, and they have a 2-0-4 record in April and early May. But remember, prior to the beginning of April and really near the end of April as well, they were at 0-4. They were coming in as probably the team that is in the worst spot when it comes to their recent form. Even worse than NYCFC because they weren't picking up any points. They would just keep losing every single week. And now all of a sudden, they've won back-to-back games. If you want to include the US Open Cup, they won 3 games in a row. I mean, that I don't think a lot of Atlanta fans saw that coming with the way that things have turned around. Now, credit credit the fact that when you look at the wins that they have so far in these last couple of games, these last couple of opponents that they face aren't actually world beaters. But hey, for a team that is near the bottom of the standings, and I feel like the rules of this year Eastern Conference is that if you're a team that if you can beat against teams that you know are going to be right around there, that is kind of almost in the bad kind of form, but if you're able to beat them, you can definitely rise up in the standings, and that's kind of the formula that New England has done, and that's kind of the reason why they're sitting where they are in the standing, and compared to these other teams aren't able to win against some other bad teams, and that's where they are sitting right now. Now that being said, Orlando City did get that big win against Inter Miami, but as we said about Orlando City, it's been a very difficult season for them. I mean, to be fair, during this month, this was probably way better compared to what we saw back in March. I mean, I already mentioned back in March what a disastrous month that was for Orlando City. They have a 3-1-7 record currently with 10 points. They scored 16 goals while conceding 32 goals. And I will say that at least on the defensive end, as ugly as that is, it is still the worst defensive uh, record right now, and they're the only team to concede already 30 plus goal, and they're still on point of potentially shipping almost 100 goal this season. At least it's not as bad as what we saw in the beginning of the year when they were just getting rinsed left, right, and center every single go game. Yes, they are still shifting goal at an alarming rate, but at least they're also now scoring goal as well. Again, the 16 goals that they've scored, that is, I think, even more than what we seen back in March, where this team was just beyond broken. Like they were bad of both the attack and the defense as well. But that being said, they still have a really bad goal differential. I think this is the worst goal differential in the league with a -16. Actually, no. I think Sporting KC actually has a worse goal differential, which is crazy to say because Orlando City for a while they had the worst goal differential and it wasn't even close whatsoever. And we'll talk about Sporting KC a little bit later when we look at Western Conference standings of how they have just completely fall off the map themselves. 2-1-3 is the record that Orlando City has in April and early May as well. Now, looking at this CF Montreal team, they have a 3-0-7 record and currently have 9 points. They've scored 14 goals this season while conceding 23 with a -9 goal differential, and they have a 2-0-3 record. Montreal, during the middle April, it looked like there was life for this team, and then they lost to Atlanta United, and things started to kind of fall apart again with this team. Again, maybe that's due to the new interim head coach boost. Like I said, when you have a new interim head coach boost, you're gonna get that confidence from the team. But how long is that gonna last? Is that gonna really run out, especially after the performance that they had against Atlanta United? Then we look at the team that's currently at the bottom of the standings. It's still hard to believe that this is a team that won the Supporter Shield last season. And now it's the opposite. They are now dead last in the standings. It feels like it's LA Galaxy 2025 nightmare all over again for the Philadelphia Union, because this is a team that is seriously trying to become the first ever MLS team to go from the best record in one season to having the worst record the very next season. Like, they're literally taking first to last to heart with a 1-3-7 record, still only with 6 points. They scored 9 goals this season, which is by far the fewest that any team has had. In fact, I think they're the only MLS team to have yet to register a double-digit goal so far this season. Definitely in the East. That is 17 goals conceded with -8 goal differential. 1-3-2 is the record they had in April and May. So at least they got a win during this time. Unlike in March, they didn't get a win whatsoever. But yeah, things are still very dire for this Philadelphia Union side. And again, I can't believe I'm seeing an LA Galaxy situation all over again. Where, last year when we saw the Galaxy win from MLS Cup, having the longest winless run to start the season by an MLS Cup champion, one of the longest winless run we have ever seen a team had in any time a spell. That was quite shocking to see. I didn't think it was going to happen again, especially for a team like the Union in terms of winning the Supporters Shield. And I get it. Yes, they got rid of a lot of core pieces that really hampered this team, but still, they make the signings to replace them, and you would think those signings at least would work out, right? It has not worked out. In fact, it's been the complete opposite. Those all the signings that they have has just been turned completely into boss, and that's kind of where we get the Philadelphia Union right now, just a team that is circling the doldrum, and this started looking like the Union that we saw back in the mid 2010s, and even when they came into the league, where you remember those kind of team and how bad the Union was. It seems like we're getting back to that level with this thing. But there you have it. That is pretty much it. Looking at the Eastern Conference standing after April and early May as well. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this? Tomorrow we're going to look at the Western Conference standing. And believe me, the Western Conference standing, there's going to be a lot of teams that up here that has a really godly record in April and early May, because the West is just so much stronger this season compared to the East. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys do a like, smash the subscribe button. And yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.